Hi, everyone. We are First Seed Sports. Mike, Kyle, and Zach back at it again. This week, or today, I should say, we are coming at you with a grab bag. Grab bag is our hopefully weekly news segment where we highlight some injuries, some potential signings, and whatever's going on in this weird and unruly COVID world that we're living in. So hopefully, check out the weekly grab bag, figure out your latest news, and dominate your fantasy league. So to start off, we are going to start with the topic of Derrius Guice, who found himself in some trouble this weekend. Kyle?
So Darius Geis found himself in, yeah, you're right, a lot of trouble. He pleaded guilty, didn't plead guilty. He turned himself in for domestic abuse, and almost immediately the Washington football team dropped him. Smart on their part. I don't know why you would want anything to do with him, but at the same time, Geis finds himself often without a team. The man's been injured for his entire career. What is that? 2 ACL injuries.
Mm-hmm.
He's hurt, and this time it's a different type of hurt. But in Washington's backfield, you're left with Adrian Peterson, the old vet who many speculated before the dropping of Geis was going to be a preseason cut from Washington. But now he probably has a clear path to stay on the team. And Antonio Gibson, who has a much better path to receiving a workload in the backfield. But to be honest, for me, that isn't a running backfield that I want anything to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw the stat that they were second to last in rushing attempts last year. And that's probably because they are not a good team.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that they played from behind so much that they had to throw the ball just about every down.
Now, on that topic, do you guys think that Bryce Love will be involved at all?
I'm glad you brought him up. In all honesty, I think that he could be the one that benefits the most from this. I think he was probably a borderline cut, kind of like Kyle said, going into camp. I know that they have Peyton Barber there too. If you guys remember last year from Tampa Bay, he is not sexy by any stretch of the mind. I mean, he kind of reminds me of like that Chris Ivory, just big bruiser back who's going to get the job done, and no one in fantasy likes it. But so obviously Peyton Barber's there, and I think he's going to stay there. So I think Bryce Love was a big candidate to get cut. But I think with Geis being removed from the team, I think that opens the door up for him pretty clearly. I think that with a year in the system, and we forget in 2017 he was a Heisman runner-up. He was that good. He lost the Heisman. I don't remember who 2017 was off the top of my head. It might have been Lamar. In all honesty, I think it was actually. So losing the Heisman to Lamar Jackson isn't exactly a bad sign. So I think that Love is pretty special, and I think that this little bit of opportunity could really benefit him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely not a fantasy-friendly backfield in 2020. That's for sure.
Mm-mm.
Lots of question marks.
But sometimes, it is true that sometimes those murky running or the murky situations are the ones that produce real fantasy gold, because everyone wants to stay away from it. And 10th, 11th round, you take a flyer on Bryce Love, and you could have an RB2, and that's gold in fantasy. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Kyle, anything else?
It's all on my thoughts for the Geis situation.
All right, perfect. All right, well, we'll move on then. The next thing that we want to cover is kind of the COVID exemption list. With this past Thursday coming and going, that was the deadline. I believe it was 4 p.m. this past Thursday. I feel like everyone was kind of anticipating a little bit of like a trade deadline situation where everyone was going to make a move at the deadline, but that really didn't happen. Thank goodness. So there really weren't a ton of notable COVID exemptions, probably the most significant being Damian Williams, the running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. If you haven't watched our last video or two, go ahead, take a look at that, because we kind of highlighted a little bit in there with the rise of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and his value. He skyrocketed. He's up in the first round now after having a second or third round ADP prior to the exemption. So Damian Williams is the first one that I'd like to mention. The second one I think that's notable is probably right tackle Marcus Cannon for the New England Patriots. He's going to be protecting an injury-plagued Cam Newton this year, or he was going to be protecting Cam. And not only is it just Marcus Cannon, but it's 8 other of his teammates who also opted out, and that's not a low number. That's kind of notable. I think everyone, rightfully so, thinks that maybe they're leaning towards the whole tank for Trevor situation, where if this Cam experiment doesn't pan out and they didn't juice another 5 years out of the former MVP, then I think that they're just going to throw in the towel and get their next future quarterback. What do you guys think?
It's tricky. You never know what Belichick's up to, especially without Brady there anymore. They definitely need somebody. I'm excited for Cam though. I'd like to see what he's doing, but with 8 or 9 Patriots opting out, that team's going to take a hit.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very interested too in seeing what's going on in the quarterback room this year, because there has been no comments made on Cam Newton being the solidified starter in week 1. And I'm a big believer in Stidham. I've got a few shares of him in Dynasty this year. And I'm really excited to see what goes on in that QB room, because you never know with all these opt-outs and the low depth chart that they have this year. So we'll see.
Yeah, by all means. I mean, I think that Cam is – I definitely think he still has stuff in the tank, and I think he's playing with a vengeance, so to speak. But I agree with you. I think Stidham's special too. I watched him at Auburn, and he showed he's a solid quarterback. So, but moving on from there, we'll talk about a couple other guys. Geronimo Allison opted out for the Detroit Lions, so that really kind of leaves the 3 receivers that were there last year to be the stars. I mean, I think that that's actually almost a good thing for fantasy, because it's not going to take away from some of those other guys, Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones Jr. I know Mike's a huge Marvin Jones guy, and Old Faithful Danny Amendola is still there too. The waiver wire is thin. You can always count on Amendola for a 7-8 point week just to plug the hole. So, you guys have anything on the Lions or no?
I've got plenty to talk about on the Lions.
I know. We're not going to get you carried away on the Lions too awfully much. Before I know it, you'll be telling me why Matt Stafford's going to be our next president.
Don't count him out.
What's that?
Don't count him out.
Count him out, yeah. All right. So for our next one, we have wide receiver Devin Funchess from Green Bay. Again, I don't think anyone was expecting massive things out of Devin Funchess by any stretch of the mind. He kind of I think he overachieved when he was a Panther. I think that he was kind of the only show in town, and that's kind of carried him this far in his career. I think the thought is even that maybe with opting out, I believe that this was a 1-year deal. This could be the last that we see of Devin Funchess. I really don't. You guys have anything on this?
I won't miss him.
No, I don't think so either.
I don't know how fantasy relevant he would have been anyways. I think the guy to look for in Green Bay now is definitely Lazard. I know a lot of people are high on him, and I think that's good flex value there for the 2020 season.
I agree.
And Rodgers is high on him.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a name that isn't going to be an everyday name. You're going to sit down. If you're in a casual league, you're going to sit down and guys are going to go, who did you just draft? And you're going to get clowned for drafting this guy, but he could post that value. He could sneak into the wide receiver 2 conversation even, I think, because if there's one thing we've seen from Rodgers, he can throw the ball. So, all right, moving on, we have right tackle Marcus Gilbert for the Arizona Cardinals. Again, this is a starting lineman. I think that the Cardinals are going to rest easy. I believe that they have some depth on the offensive line, so I think that they'll be okay there. But still, nonetheless, it's a starting offensive lineman. Moving on from there, Marquise Goodwin, wide receiver from Philadelphia. What do you guys think about that? Any comments?
They brought him in to be their basically speedster, stretch the field for them. But I think with the healthy Deshaun Jackson, that's his role. So I don't know how much Goodwin would have actually contributed in Philadelphia, but I guess we'll never know.
Yeah, I think Goodwin was just there to have somebody who can actually catch the ball that isn't Nelson Aguilar. They needed wide receiver depth last year, and for some reason they bolstered their depth this year. And Goodwin being out isn't going to impact that team at all.
They actually took Nelson Aguilar and sent him as far as they possibly could and put him in Oakland.
They need to.
Now Las Vegas, so he got a little bit closer. But I do think that this actually impacts Rager a little bit. I think it bumps Rager into the spotlight a little more. And I think that late in your draft, if you probably want to take a flyer on Raker, I think it might pan out for you. And again, in the 12th, 13th round, let me look up his ADP real quick. I believe that he is a 13th rounder right now. He
I got it
is.
right here. He's
Let's
in
see
the
where-
back of the 10th.
Oh, okay. He's in the back of the tent. So he's probably worked his way up a little bit since the news of Marquise Goodwin. But at that rate, you can take a shot on him because if he pans out, he does, and if not, you cut him. So really, I think that the Eagles were just looking for some stability, and unfortunately, they traded for Marquise Goodwin, and then he opted out, so that really didn't pan out for them. But I don't think anyone's losing sleep over missing Marquise Goodwin this year. So, all right, moving on from there, we have another 3 linemen. We have offensive tackle Jawan James for the Denver Broncos. He was actually going to be replacing or starting for one of the two, either Garrett Bowles or Elijah Wilkinson. If you guys watched any Denver games last year, you can tell that Garrett Bowles is just not a good tackle. I believe he was close to the top, if not the top, in penalties per game last year for the Denver Broncos. He was just abysmal. So I think that with him being thrust back into the starting spotlight, that kind of worries me a little bit because I was very high on Drew Lock and that whole Denver Broncos offense this year. And, really without the time, I don't know how well Lock is going to do. But I'm still pretty hopeful that maybe Garrett Bowles did something this offseason and found himself a little bit. But I think that, this is a little notable. Anything for you guys?
No, nothing there. I agree with you that he was not one of the best tackles in the league. So it's definitely a hit for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
It's a slight hit for Melvin
Agreed.
Gordon and
Agreed.
Philip Lindsay, but not enough for me to really drop them in my ranks.
I really haven't been targeting either of them, so I mean it doesn't terrify me. When I think about this team, I think about Drew Lock and the offense or the passing game weapons more so because I think that those are the places that I'll probably tend to go in fantasy drafts before I go to Melvin. All right, so moving on, we have next offensive tackle Nate Solder for the Giants. Again, never great to lose a starting lineman, especially when you are the Giants and you've had line problems for as long as I can remember. How do you guys think this affects Daniel Jones?
For being as young as he is, I think it does affect him. You really do need a solid line around you, so it'll be definitely something to monitor. And on another note, Saquon Barkley is not the best pass blocking back in the league, so that does add a little bit more complications. So it'll definitely be something to zone in on and see what happens.
Copy everything that Mike just said.
Yeah, I think he summed it up pretty well. I think the one thing that Daniel Jones is a little underrated on is his mobility. I think he's a little more mobile than people think, so maybe that'll save his butt a little bit. If it was Eli back there, he would probably not make it out of the season. But Daniel Jones can move around a little bit, so I think he's going to be all right. All right, another one, a more interesting one here. Guard, I'm going to butcher this, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif from the Kansas City Chiefs. He is, I believe he's a starter for the Chiefs as well, which is notable for the former Super Bowl champions, or the reigning Super Bowl champions, I should say. And he opted out actually for medical reasons, but not because he is at risk, because he wanted to help people. He is the only certified doctor, I think, in the NFL, and really I can't commend this more. I don't even really want to comment on the fantasy implications because kudos to him and what he's doing. It's special, I think. Agreed?
Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
All right. So we'll move on right from there. We talked about Damian Williams already. And last but not least, Mike, I'm going to hand this one over to you. Tell me about Albert Wilson.
Yeah, so Albert Wilson, if you guys have been following him, he started his career in Kansas City, and the guy was phenomenal. He was a return specialist / slot guy, basically big play guy, got a lot of reverses and stuff like that. And that's when I fell in love. Kind of like how I have a love for Marvin Jones, I have a love for Albert Wilson. And then he goes to Miami, and the past year or two haven't been too solid for him. And, of course, in 2020, the year that I take him, and I think 25% of my dynasty leagues, he opts out. So all that does for me for Miami has opened up more targets for Preston Williams, who's coming off an injury. He'll be back, and I think it opens up a lot for Devontae Parker this year. So,
Kyle, anything?
No, nothing
No.
from me. I wasn't that high on Albert Wilson. So
Yeah, I can't say I was either. It does satisfy, or it does give me a little more faith in the Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki camp. We also saw Allen Hurns opt out this week, so that's two of their wide receivers. So you know that they're going to throw a third body out there. We don't know who it is yet, but I think that a lot of the focus of this team is going to be on Devontae Parker and Preston Williams and Mike Gesicki too. So I think that's enough to say about the COVID exemptions. You know, it's nice to see that there were some good reasons on there, some family issues, some prior health issues, some even doctor related issues. And I think it's good that those guys got out if they needed to, but I'm more excited about the people who didn't opt out. We didn't see any massive names opting out, which was good. So moving on from there, we were actually going to push into the injury news section, where Kyle is going to take over. Kyle, take it away.
all right. So we've got probably my favorite injury report is Alex Smith is in recovery. And oh man, do I love Alex Smith. Seeing the news that he was able to play again makes me so happy.
Absolutely.
He suffered an awful hit and injury to his leg, but man, did seeing him be able to come back get me excited. When he was on the 49ers, holy cow. Huge fan of him. And then he went on to the Chiefs and took the reins before Mahomes came through. And he killed it. I remember my favorite stat was how he probably had he had the first and only season where he went the whole year without throwing a passing touchdown to a wide receiver. And I don't know how you do that without being an awful quarterback, but he did it. And then he went on to Washington. He got hurt, and he is surprisingly coming back, and I'm excited. I hope he plays. I have weird doubts that he will be able and be ready for week 1 or early this season. So I'm not, for fantasy's sake, probably not going to touch him at all. But it's exciting. Big news. For
sure. I think that, again, it's just a great story that he's even able to walk again, that he still has the leg, let alone playing football. I think that kudos to him for trying to come back and play again. If he wins a starting job, I'm just going to be even more blown away. I don't really think that this has a ton of fantasy implications aside from maybe Dwayne Haskins getting benched. But, really just a feel-good story that he came back and is able to play again.
All right. And then next on the list, we've got T.Y. Hilton is returning, actually, from a hamstring injury that he suffered earlier this offseason. It doesn't excite me. I'm not excited for him this season. I know Phillip Rivers loves to throw the ball, but for some reason, T.Y. doesn't excite me. What do you guys think?
I think it opens up a lot for the younger guys. You got Paris Campbell and Michael Pittman Jr. there. So they're definitely great value in the late rounds this year. So that's the fantasy implication. Other than that, I know Phillip Rivers loves to chuck the ball around the field, and I know he loves to lead his receivers to open field and let them go do their thing. And that really is T.Y. Hilton, but it really just comes down to the injuries. He's already dealing with a hammy injury going into week 1 now. So hopefully he gets better. I wish the best to him. But fantasy implication-wise, I would look Michael Pittman Jr. and the other rookie receiver.
So real quick, I just want to say two things. I want to say first off that I think I really kind of pair T.Y. Hilton and A.J. Green in together in my mind. They kind of go around the same range in drafts, and I think if I'm going to buy a lottery ticket on either of them, I'd want AJ Green 10 times out of 10. I think being tied to Joe Burrow in that offense, you guys know my affinity for Joe Burrow. I think that it's just more of a certain thing. I think that the Colts are probably going to lean a little more towards running the ball with Mack and Swift, and the Bengals are probably going to lean a little more towards throwing the ball. So I would probably take AJ Green in that argument rather than T.Y. Hilton. He's just kind of someone that I'm staying away from. I think he's reaching the end of his career. But Mike, you brought up Paris Campbell. I love Paris Campbell. I think that he suffered injuries last year and struggled off the gate, just kind of had a hard time adjusting. But I think we could see a big year from him in year 2. I actually have his draft stats here. He's 6 foot 205, a pretty decent receiver size. He was a second round pick, and he actually ran a 4.31 40-yard dash, which is pretty damn fast. That's hard to argue with that speed. So he's a burner. He's a playmaker. I think that if he gets on the field, like you said, he could be great late round value.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then finally, Will Dissly's also back. He's able to practice. He took place in his first practice, actually. After, what was it, a torn ACL last year? What was his injury?
Torn Achilles.
Torn Achilles.
Yep.
I was a fan of Dissly last year. He had an exciting start to the season. He was a favorite target of Russell Wilson, and I think he out-targeted Jimmy. I think Jimmy Graham was not doing anything anyways.
Mm-hmm.
He was, yeah. No, Dissly, love him. I was excited for him 2 years ago when he had a weird breakout couple weeks, and then he disappeared, and then he came back last season to a great start, and I think he could defeat Greg Olsen for that top tight end spot in Seattle, and I'm excited to see that take place.
Yeah,
definitely. He had 4 touchdowns in 6 games last year, and he averaged 11.4 yards a catch. So it's definitely exciting to see him back on the field, and I guess we'll just have to see what Greg Olsen does to his stats fantasy-wise and how that pans out. But I'm pretty sure Greg Olsen is going to be there just for a veteran presence. I think he will get snaps, kind of have like a lesser of a Jason Witten role with him and Blake Jarwin last year, something like that. So we'll see.
Yeah, my only drawback was going to be Greg Olsen. I think that being a Panthers fan, I've seen him play. I think there is still a little something in the tank. He's super injury prone. I think maybe 1 or 2 more injuries, and that could be it. He tweaks something in training camp. He might not even be out there for week 1. So I do like Dissly. That being said, the Achilles is tough to come back from. So we'll have to see if he's as explosive as we hoped. And I mean, really, whoever is the tight end being on – did you guys see the Russell Wilson Unlimited video? Did either of you guys see that?
Mr. Unlimited.
Unlimited. So being on the back end of Mr. Unlimited, he's hopefully going to see a lot of targets, whoever it is. So I have hope for Dissly, especially if Greg Olsen isn't in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then I'll hand this next new piece of news to Mike.
All right. So, so the new signing, Lamar Miller signed a 1-year deal with the Patriots. I was trying to break down the implications of what that would mean fantasy-wise, and I don't think that it's going to do a whole lot to the main back, which is James White. I think James White still gets his PPR receptions, and he still is on the field in passing situations. All this really does is maybe it takes a hit on Sony Michel if you were honestly interested in him at all, and a little bit of Rex Burkhead. So it's something to monitor. I think mainly he's just there. He might get a few goal line carries here and there, but I don't think it does too much to James White, if anything at all. And what would you guys say about that situation? You guys have any comments?
Kyle, go ahead.
Doesn't make me want to touch either Sony Michel or Lamar Miller remotely. I expected going into draft this year if Sony dropped deep enough, I would have snagged him. I did last year. I wasn't excited, was not happy at all. But I was in late RB. I think he could have been somebody to have. But Lamar does not make me excited about that possibility anymore. And I just don't want to touch either of them. I agreed. I think James White is still going to handle his fair share of receptions. And do very well for PPR. But no, I don't want Sony or Lamar.
Agreed. I think the only draftable asset really, or the only one that I'm going to want on any team is going to be James White. I think his PPR upside is far greater than any of the other guys here. One name that I do want to bring up that I didn't hear either of you guys mention is Damian Harris, the rookie, the second-year running back out of Alabama. And last year he didn't really find his place in the offense. He was pretty highly touted. A lot of analysts had him as being kind of a sweetheart, late-round flyer, but he never really did anything. I think if Lamar sticks around, unfortunately, this could dig into Damian Harris. But, Lamar is ancient. If we see him get cut before the season even starts, then maybe take a look at Damian Harris. But that's about all I got on this.
All right, so now we'll go on to the next segment here. We wanted to talk a little bit about Hard Knocks. I don't know if you guys were watching yesterday, but I took away two things from this Hard Knocks episode. First off, it's the Chargers and the Rams, and you got a good sense of like how they're handling COVID and how they're doing distancing and testing every day, and that honestly warms my heart. It's a great feeling, and it's a good thing to know that the NFL season most likely will happen on time and there won't be any problems. But in this COVID world, like Zach said, you never know what's going on. But in the midst of it, I got two things out of it. One, Justin Herbert is a lot more accurate than I thought he would be. I tweeted back in January on my Twitter, and I said that Justin Herbert would be the most successful quarterback out of that QB draft class. And I just think that he's the most NFL ready, and I think that his poise in the pocket is just unbelievable. And you got a little bit of a glimpse of that yesterday. Obviously, no pads are on yet. They weren't doing anything major and stuff like that. But it was great to see him out there and impress Anthony Lynn even in some of the accuracy drills and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing I got out of that was the Rams were running a lot of 12 personnel, which is 2 tight end sets and stuff like that. And one name I did not see out there was Tyler Higbee. Now, I know a lot of people are high on Tyler Higbee, and I had my eye on him, and I keep seeing other tight ends in this 12 personnel. I think they showed about like 3 to 5 reps of this 12 personnel, and Tyler Higbee was not on the field. So that's something to look forward to. Gerald Everett really took the reign, I guess, on that day in practice or whatever it was. But it's definitely something to look forward to. And I think it's interesting that a lot of people are kind of writing Everett off this year and are so high on Higbee. And right now it doesn't look like that's the case. What do you guys think about the Tyler Higbee situation this year?
So I've kind of been fading Higbee a little bit recently. I'm not super high on him anymore, just from all the things I've heard. Credit the fantasy footballers for bringing this up, but they said that Sean McVay brought in Gerald Everett as his guy. He was his Jordan Reed. Remember, McVay was with the Washington Redskins and now Washington football team. But and when he was there, that was when Jordan Reed was a successful tight end. That was when he was a top 5 fantasy option. And he saw those athletic traits in Gerald Everett, and I think that's why he hasn't given up on him yet. And I think he's gonna keep trying to prove that he was right with Gerald Everett to the point where it's probably not even going to be worth it anymore. I do think Higbee is a more talented tight end. I just don't think you should be drafting him straight off the bat.
Yeah, I was pretty excited to begin the offseason about Higbee. But as of late, I don't like where he's going. I liked him initially because I thought he'd be a steal, but there's too much hype about him. And I can't say I joined in on the hype. He had a great end of season last year, but I think that Rams offense is going to be a bit of a different look this year, and I don't think Higbee will be productive in it.
Mike, I just want to revisit one point that you brought up before. All right, we're going to play a game real quick. So I'm going to tell you some stats about 2 quarterbacks real quick. One quarterback is 6'5", 245 pounds, and ran a 4.59 at the NFL Combine. The other quarterback is 6'6", 236 pounds, and ran a 4.69 at the NFL Combine. You guys know who I'm talking about?
Can't say that I do.
Any guesses, Kyle?
What were the weights on those boys?
One is the 6'5" man is 245, and the other one is 236. 6'6", 236.
Is that Jordan Love?
Nope.
And then what was the time for the 40 on the first guy?
On the first guy, it's a 4.59.
4.59, and then you said 4.69.
4.69. Yep.
Are either of them Daniel Jones?
No.
Are
The
they
guys
both?
I'm talking about? What's that?
Are they both rookies?
One is a rookie. One is an MVP, a former MVP.
Ooh. All right, so lay it on us.
All right.
Driving there.
The 6'5", 245, 4.59 is Cam Newton. He is a
That was gonna
massive
be
person.
My next guess.
And the other person who actually has 1 inch on him and weighs 10 pounds less, ran a slightly slower 40, is Justin Herbert. When
Wow.
you pair that size player with that cannon arm that they both had, Cam had some accuracy issues. I get that. I think the injuries played into that a little bit. But Herbert's a big dude, and I think that he provides running upside that not a lot of people see. And I think that, unfortunately, we're not going to see him from week 1. I think we're probably going to see Tyrod Taylor in there. But I think once the reins get turned over, the Chargers are going to see that they got a steal. I think that they have a real player in Justin Herbert. And I think your prediction is going to be right, Mike. I really do.
Yeah, I did not know that was his 40 time. That's news to me. So that's even more affirmation for myself to believe in him.
Absolutely. All right. Any other comments, questions, concerns? We good?
Nothing for now.
I think so.
Cool. All right. Well, that wraps up our first grab bag. This has been the grab bag for the week of August 12th. We're recording here on a Wednesday. So tune in next week. We'll have another one coming up for you. For Kyle and Mike, I'm Zach, and take care.
Peace.